Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2022 horror film Something in the Woods. A film that is directed by Alexander T. Haag, and it stars Nicole Siniglia and Vienna Hayden. Now the film focuses on an investigative journalist called Nora, who's not a very nice person, not a very nice journalist. She essentially runs a piece that ends up with, I believe it's a senator or something, committing suicide. And she's then abducted by a relative of that senator, Carolyn, who abducts her from her home, stuffs her in the back of the car, drives off, and then they end up getting basically stuck in some woods and hunted down by some vicious creature that is dwelling within these woods. Right, what are my thoughts on Something in the Woods? Right, okay, let's see if I can get any positives out of the way, because I'm not going to lie, guys, I struggled with this one a little bit. Positives, performances are of a decent standard, even though I didn't necessarily like the characters. There's some decent cinematography from within the woods, and that's kind of really the idea is decent, I guess. I mean, any horror where you're kind of lost in the woods and something's hunting you and tracking you down, you know, that kind of triggers that fear within a lot of people in horrors and things. So there's a few elements there that could have made this film work. Unfortunately, they didn't make this film work, because honestly, guys, this film is not great at all, and there's so many reasons why. Now it's a low budget film, this, and so you always need to check your expectations at the door when you're going into like a low budget type film. But as this is low budget but not no budget, but I really struggled to get on board with this film. Okay, some of the reasons why were the characters, for example. This Nora, this journalist, was not a nice person. So I just couldn't get on with that character. The other person, Carolyn, who abducts her, not a very nice person. So I struggled to get on with that character. Now, there were some ingredients there to maybe put these characters on some kind of arc. Redemption arc or something to kind of win you over, but no, we don't get any of that, really. The characters, who they are at the beginning, is kind of who they remain throughout for the most part. They're not like likable characters, so therefore I wasn't rooting for any of them. So I really do think they could have done a lot more with this tension between the characters. And really worked on that lack of distrust, and then potentially building a trusting relationship to try and survive the situation that they're in. And there's a lot of elements there, a lot of ingredients that could have been played around with, and I just don't think the film did any of that effectively at all. The characters just were monotone. It's just how they were written, that's how they were performed, and there was no arc, I don't think, at all for any of these characters, which was a real shame. There was potential there. And then the film does silly things like when this character Nora is abducted, she gets stuffed in the back of this car. Now, she gets her hands tied together like that, so she can still do this sort of thing. Stuffed in the trunk of this car, and she stuffs something in her mouth. But number one, she doesn't tape it round her mouth. She just puts a rag in her mouth. To say nothing of the fact that she could just have spat it out, or even with her hands tied, pulled out this rag. I mean, they treat you like you're an infant sometimes, these films, and I can't forgive that level of stupidness in movies. Because there's a scene in this film where the police come and check that everything's all right because his car's stopped at the side of the road, and this woman's stuffed in the back of this trunk. So all she needed to do was pull this rag out and shout help. I knew she could do that. Anybody watching this film knew she could do that. Did she do that? Of course she didn't do that. So therefore you just kind of scratch your head and thinking, how am I supposed to take you seriously as a film when that is just something you just can't pass and ignore? And this film is full of like moments like that where you're just like, oh. And the lighting as well, you know, because a lot of it's at night and things like that. It's just, not lit well at all. It just doesn't look right. And then we get to this creature. Now, I'm assuming it's a Wendigo or a Wendigo, whatever you want to call it. It's the worst looking Wendigo I've ever seen on screen. Even if it's not a Wendigo, it's one of the worst looking creatures I've ever seen on screen. It looked like something that had been created for a PlayStation 2 game, a low budget PlayStation 2 game. The effects were abysmal. I just took me completely out of the film. So sometimes you can watch these low budget films and there are things that keep you engaged. You know, sometimes it's a performance. Sometimes it's a pretty decent script in a low budget film. Sometimes it's the effects that keep you interested. The humour, whatever it is, line delivery, cinematography. There's something that can grab you and say, yeah, there's a real attempt at some quality here. I genuinely don't think I could say that for any aspect of this film. I found it a real chore to get through. It wasn't enjoyable, and it was a low-budget film that screamed low budget to me. So I can only really give this one a 2 out of 10. It's not scary, the effects are terrible, and I didn't enjoy any of the characters in the film. So bit of a shame, really, and definitely one to avoid, guys. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I will, of course, be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.